Now for an in-depth look at what's driving Vietnam's economy, I'm joined by Dan McClory, the president and head of China for Boustead and Company. Thanks for being with us, Dan.
Thanks, Rachelle. Great to be on your show.
Now, PricewaterhouseCoopers expects Vietnam to grow by more than 5% for the next 30 plus years. What would realistically drive that type of growth?
It's a very elegant transition from manufacturing. So think about low-tech manufacturing, maybe of shoes and clothing, to high-tech industries. So high-tech is going from 5% of Vietnam's export market to 25% from 2010 to just last year. So that's a higher end of the value chain. Those are more expensive, higher ticket items, and that's a big force behind driving the growth.
Now, what about on the flip side? In terms of the most pressing challenges facing Vietnam's economy, what stands out for you?
We heard about one earlier in the show, Rachelle, and that has to do with climate change. Of developed nations, Vietnam is one of the most susceptible to weather patterns and natural disasters. Somewhere between 1 and 1.5% of GDP is lost every year to things like floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, all different types of natural weather events that take place. And this is somewhat troubling because you can't really control that. And the second factor, of course, would be a downturn in the commodity markets. So especially oil has impacted the value of exports that are coming out of Vietnam.
Obviously, a lot of these things, as you mentioned, not in control for Vietnam. But what about the TPP? We know that Vietnam would have been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Trade-Pacific Partnership, a trade pact that many believe is now on life support. How do you think that would have impacted Vietnam's economy?
Well, clearly it would have helped in terms of connecting the United States, which is their biggest export partner, to a tariff and a system that could be used on a lot of different levels. However, we know that Vietnam is part of RCEP, which is designed to account for somewhere around 30% of the globe's economy. It has 16 different multilateral trade agreements that are already in place with other nations. And its most important ones, of course, are with China, South Korea, and Japan. So I think Vietnam is in pretty good shape. And if anything, as a country, it's shown us how resilient it is year after year with challenge after challenge. It really is a good example of being able to overcome the odds.
Now, Dan, let's explore the importance of the China-Vietnam relationship. What are some of the ways these ties are really affecting Vietnam's growth?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's Vietnam over the past decade has really become China's outsourced manufacturing hub of choice. A lot of forward-thinking Chinese companies decided to set up manufacturing. It's the largest source of foreign direct investment in Vietnam is coming from China right now, because they saw that the costs in China were going up. This was because of the emerging middle class. So Vietnam is ready to take on those roles, and they've embraced it. So first and foremost, there is that dependency. I think second, you're also seeing the acknowledgement of this importance of the relationship between the two countries, going back to the very first visit of a foreign leader to China this year.
Right.
Was the premier of Vietnam. So obviously this is being recognized at a special level, but I think China understands that Vietnam is an important and trusted trade partner, and despite some of the other political discourse that may be out there, it's a very valued relationship.
Now, Dan, our reporter also explored the importance of infrastructure to Vietnam. So how does China's One Belt, One Road initiative play into that and overall economic growth in Vietnam?
It's a great point, Rachelle. So the Hai Phong port, which is in northern Vietnam, is at the confluence of two trade routes that play directly into the One Belt, One Road initiative. And these are bilateral, meaning Vietnam being connected to the One Belt, One Road initiative is not only going to expedite the flow of Chinese goods into Vietnam where they can be consumed, but it's going to help Vietnam with this burgeoning electronics and high-tech manufacturing sector move goods into the remainder of the value chain that's being created by the One Belt, One Road initiative. And these are some big projects, Rachelle. You've got Samsung in particular is putting another $1.5 billion behind about $4 billion that they've already invested in Vietnam.
Right.
And Intel is strong in the country as well.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dan McClory, the president and head of China for Boustead and Company.